The two Jills, a psychologist and psychic intuitive, reveal mind-blowing insights that turn psychology, self-help, and conscious teachings on their heads. Why? Because they work. Real help, sincere growth is here. Welcome to Psyched.
Hi, Jill.
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am great. Honestly, it's been raining for like 3 days, but we don't have it that bad here, but it's...
Yeah, you're all in sweater weather.
I'm in sweaters. It's a very hunker down situation. I feel very cozy, and I'm psyched to have this conversation.
Very, very nice. I'm psyched about the topic today. In my community, some people it's their favorite thing I talk about, and some people it's their least favorite thing I talk about. So I hope my intention is not to hurt anyone's feelings or push anyone's buttons today. And I think you're the same. Yes.
Yes, most definitely.
I'm not trying to hurt anyone. But the topic today, as we've written it down, is that the woo-woo, i.e., alternative spirituality, individual spirituality, enlightenment to consciousness, is a slippery slope. And sometimes are you okay if I just add kind of a little arch here?
Yes.
What I keep finding with people is that at a moment of vulnerability in their life, when they are really feeling uncentered or unsettled, they start investigating, seeking, searching for what am I missing? What did I do wrong? What can help me? And there's this whole industry just waiting for them. And what I keep finding is that industry that I'll call the new age, you can call it spirituality, you can call it, there's a lot of things you can call it, self-help,
yeah.
Right? What happens is they never get out of that. So there's a lot of hooks and claws and stickiness in that space that once you get in that stickiness, it's very hard to get out of that stickiness because there are so many alternative and to a lot of people that get in that space, especially for the first time, brand new ideas that feel irrefutable. They're presented as, oh, we're so glad you now know the truth, sort of thing. And the most brains don't have a great system for, but what if this isn't true, right? So it can grip people for the rest of their lives. And if it delivered what it promised, I would have zero problems with it, right? But I've seen how much time, energy, money is that people are investing into a whole bunch of things in that industry. So I'll be pulling back the curtain a lot in this one. We can talk about, whatever feels appropriate. And as we're divinely led, each of us, Jill, but that's kind of my vision of it.
I like it. You bring up some, two things really stand out for me when we're dealing with this new age, right? It is an effort at self-help, but the irony of those words, self-help is the right idea. You can help yourself. That's true. But ironically, self-help then turns into who could help me self-help. And so you have the right idea and then you go and you outsource it immediately. That's where the problem lies. The return to self has always been the way out, back, through. But we keep outsourcing it. And it's insidious. We don't know we're doing it. And we end up following someone else, which is what got us into this mess in the first place. Right? By not following ourselves. So this dovetails off of last week's episode about trust and self-trust and what that really is, and not relying on someone else. That doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. When I read a self-help book, I open it up, I fan through the beginning of it, the first few pages, and I'm like, all right, now where do I go with this? Where does this take me? because I don't want someone else's prescription, but sometimes I need a little, I need a little jump start, right, to break me out of my patterns. But following someone else's prescription often I feel leads to a deeper alienation from the self. Mm-hmm. And sometimes things honestly get worse.
Yeah. Oh, they're getting worse when they deserved and needed like something better, right? It's just, yeah, I'm not sure where to start here, but I guess it could be helpful to just point out some of the effects, like the top toxic effects of it. Does that sound good if we both kind of...
I like that. Yeah, let's do it.
So my most concerning kind of observation of that whole space is losing your sense of self and your inherent worth and value. And instead, your worth and value is placed on if you are doing these things or if you are following that path. That to me is highly problematic because your value is completely dependent on if you're doing supposedly these, this appropriate thing. So I guess that's my top one. What's your top kind of concern with it, Jill?
I think my top concern really, and this hit me personally, like really hard, fairly recently, is I got to the point in my journey, whatever you want to call life, right, where I realized nobody could help me. And it was this interesting, we have such an ingrained idea that somebody knows better than we do. It is so ingrained, whether it's a doctor, a psychologist, a teacher, a parent, a priest, right? And you really, the cumulative effects of looking to somebody better than you is so undermining for your entire life of your personal capabilities, right? It's sort of like the ruby slipper thing. And I do feel like there was a moment when I was like, there's no guru who's going to get me where I want to go. They don't exist. And that was could be such a depressing moment. But for me, it was such a freeing moment, right? Because then I was able to think about where I wanted to go myself. So when you talk about, okay, what are the actual pitfalls here? I'm really talking about highlighting that cumulative effect of always putting somebody ahead of you, better than you, smarter than you, stronger than you, and what the deleterious effect of a lifelong putting yourself in the back seat. Think about that. How damaging that is. Blows my mind.
Mine probably will be like an adjacent, a complement to what you just said. The fact that some individuals are more susceptible to this, right? Some individuals that they're feeling like they're missing something, and maybe they've always felt like they're missing something, and that's so common in humanity. Some people maybe have it more regularly than others or more deeper than others, but the idea that I'm not something unless I'm a part of something, or unless I'm, accomplishing this task or doing that big, glorious looking thing, there's a lot of susceptibility there. And the fact that, there's a way to help somebody that is guiding them back to themselves. And I am so not careful about that, but it's just in my nature to help people see themselves in a more naturally whole and complete way. And helping, if they don't see their own good side, me helping them see, you've got a lot of great qualities here. Let's start with those, right? Some of those you weren't even working on. You're just naturally good and beautiful and kind-hearted and, or talented in certain ways. That's a framework to start with. And I don't like it that a lot of these cultish sort of practices make it see, it's almost like what the military does, apparently. Psychologically, we will tear you down so that you remember, or you start to believe that you're nothing, and then we'll build you back up. And it's so psychologically just like fucked up. I really, really
it creates
hate
such a dependency, right?
Oh,
It's creating a dependency. It is the opposite of getting back to yourself. When I used to work I used to work at a clinic, and my inclination was always to be a short-term therapist, even though my training was psychoanalytic. My belief was not in what they were teaching me. You know, I thought it's good to know this, but who wants to sit on a couch for 10 years? Like, that's not helpful. That's like saying you're really screwed up. This is going to take forever. That puts healing in your future, but not in your present. Right. Mm-hmm. So I remember I would always take these vacations, these long hiatuses, because I didn't want my clients to ever become dependent on me. Mm-hmm. Right. There was a real issue with that. So when I would go on vacation, I remember a few of them would be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? They would start to freak out. And I was like, no. This is when you go and you practice. First of all the work that you've done, but just seeing how great you are on your own, right? Like there's such a problem, and I've fallen into it. I was there, you know, when I first started looking for something new, I was looking for something that existed, right? I wasn't trying to create it. I was trying to find it. And that's where I think I went wrong. I'm like, who has it? Do you have it? And I kissed a lot of frogs. I'm like, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Many of them went against my nature, which is I am a free form chick. So to be like, you have to do this, and the rigid, you know, you wake up in the morning and you have your like, I can't do a prescribed life. Like that's not something I can do. So any of those types of programs, you know, that needed me to behave in a certain way or to become organized or ritualized, I felt like a loser. And I'm like, okay, these are making me feel like I'm never going to get there because the path is some sort of rigid dictum that it was against my nature. Mm-hmm. It's not the way I operate. So that happened a lot. You know, where if you don't get this person's latest, whatever, you know, buy the latest, I don't know, whatever they're putting out, then you're not going to get there. You're going to miss out. You've reached your limit, and it doesn't account for me. It leaves no room for me.
And your individuality, your originality, your originality. And
your creator, right? That's the thing. The difference between finding the answer and creating the answer is the difference between becoming a codependent, you know, poor self-help consumer, right? And master of your own domain.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, for some people that say, but I don't have an answer, that's the time to experiment. Be curious about, it's not about the answer, right? So it's, what do I want to try next, right?
Yeah.
This whole idea that someone has the answer, or you should have the answer, or that there is one answer, right? For most things in life that we really rack our brains about, it's not the math problems that that do have one answer, thank God. Blessings, right? It's the things that our brain senses the grayness, the gray area, the fogginess of it, and it starts to panic. So anyone that's appearing as a vision through the fog of "Come to me, I have the answers," it just, the brain says, "Yes, the answers come. Everybody, come here. She's got it. He's got it." So that, the idea that there's one answer drives me crazy, because there's always so many ways to go through life. And a great life. Infinite, really. There was one other emphasis of one of the things that you said, and I hope it comes to me. Oh, the done. Okay, yeah. The other main kind of complaint I have about that whole space is I don't see anyone graduating from it. They never feel done. They always feel like they're in school, not graduated. They never feel like they can be made to feel like they're top of the class. And in some really toxic environments, there's all these little pet students, little pet followers that in some really toxic environments, they're the ones that have a lot of money, right?
Yeah, and they're really cultish.
You're special, right? Let's have you up on the stage with me. Just, it's so cringy and gross. But it feels so good. And to somebody that does have a lot of money that never felt special, they're like, oh my God, this freaking guru, right? Question the story of any guru. Okay. There's a lot of ways that the story manipulates.
But that's why they dive, right? In my opinion, that's why every guru dives. It's almost a divine tenet.
Not if they die soon enough, Jill.
What?
Not if they die soon enough. If a guru dies at a point in their life where the real story hasn't come out, they can still live, and the memory lives in
infamy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll leave that one for a minute. But
protected by the followers.
Yes, and the followers actually tend to be more rigid and messed up than purporting his message or their message. But I feel like there's a divine intervention all the time when we get too stuck. And whereas the cracks in the armor of any person we idealize starts to, leak, right? And that's a beautiful thing when that happens, because it's almost like if we take the wake up, and not self-flagellate, like, how could I have been so stupid? That's not that you were stupid. You've reached the limit of what this person can give you. And now you don't need to put that person on a pedestal anymore. You can say, okay, take down, I move on, I can go next. So I like when I start to see, that somebody who is, really put up there start to fall, because hopefully some people who are following that person will wake up and go back into themselves. The issue that why this industry is so popular and self-perpetuating is that we are going into it with a deficit of self. And we're trying to find a self where it isn't. And that creates more deficit in the self. And then we go deeper to try and find harder. And all the while, and so you could see the downward spiral that self-help really is, if your goal is not to find yourself, right? And it's to find the way or someone's way or something that works for you or something that you can twist yourself into a pretzel and say, okay, I found it, but you're completely contorted. You're not even yourself anymore. You say things that you don't even believe, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. So Jill, I'm going to ask for your help with this, because I don't have the idea well thought out. A healthy person, if they are followed and revered as something like supernatural, etc., a healthy person will handle that in a very different way than somebody that has some major like fragmentation or unhealthy voids, lack of self-awareness, some mental health issues, even of any variety. So that's really important to notice. I know for myself, given the gifts and abilities that I remembered, accessed, acquired, whatever it is, picked up in my late 30s, I was not familiar with that industry. I was not even aware really of that industry. And it was kind of like, what is happening? Like, why are they asking me where they should move to? You know what I mean? And I was like, I felt the throne being kind of laid for me. You know what I mean? And I was like, I don't want to sit there. I want to sit next to where you're sitting. Right. Because I don't, the whole structure of of all of that. No, you're the one. You're the one we're following, and not everybody did this, right? But I was very aware of the subtle energetic profile of it. And I'm not saying that I'm the example of health and wellness and wholeness and completeness, but I do know that I'm regularly rejecting this sense of I'm closer to God. I'm not. I'm no close. We are all close to God. And that's the word I use. We are close to our highest power. And it is within ourselves. It's not through me, right? So as I keep coming across these really toxic patterns from that industry, I'm regularly taking that kind of shiny glass and cracking it and just going, no, that's what that is. And we're not doing that here, right? So there's so many. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a good correlate, right? So I have the same thing that in psychology, there was the same thing. You have my answers. You're the one who's supposed to give me advice, right? There's no different. All these self-help things are the same. And I am very wary of my kids seeing someone, talking to anyone, because I do worry about that susceptibility of people to not honor the person's sovereignty, right? And to take credit for the changes that my child would make, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a thing, we talked a little bit last week, about humility, right? Or maybe a couple weeks ago, a little bit about humility. Humility is really the wrong word, I think, in this case. We're not being humble when we're saying, I take no credit for the work that you have done. Mm-hmm. I will tell you when you're not working, and I will not do the work for you, but I will not take credit for your gains. And I'm not doing it to be humble. I'm doing it because it's true. I can't take you anywhere that you don't take yourself. I cannot. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's this weird, and in a weird way for some of them, the humility almost, if they think that I'm being humble by rejecting their, whatever idealization of me, then it actually increases the idealization. Because you're this and you're so humble too. I'm like, no, that the first part was wrong and the second part is wrong, right? It's not a humility when I'm sort of rejecting. I'm not rejecting that I'm there for somebody to bounce off of. But really, when somebody talks to me and somebody talks to you, they hear themselves, mm-hmm. right? When you're bringing someone's higher layers in, that's them, not you. And when I'm, appealing to a more intact aspect of whoever's in front of me, that's them, right? Not me. So it's a really interesting, there is a susceptibility by some people, especially if they have a large following. It is very seductive to stay out of, wow, I must be great. Everybody's telling me I'm great. I mean, mm-hmm. That's why people in power look at everybody in power. Mm-hmm. They start out okay and maybe with good intentions. Power corrupts. It just does. I don't even take it as a flaw in the person. There's the energy of that is incredibly seductive.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
So to be, a healthy, approach that I've seen some very, public figures do is they like to also make time for in their inner circle the people that aren't super impressed with them in the same ways, right? Yes, people are like, that's just mom, you know what I mean? Or that's just dad, that's just my spouse, that's just my best friend, they're not like one of the groupies, right? That is so healthy and so important because it's grounding, right?
It is grounding, yeah.
And I even wrote in the foreword to my book, I appreciate, my family and loved ones, they'll probably never read this, right?
Yes.
And that was the third book, I'm sure they still haven't read it. And I don't need them to, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to act like I'm an example of some, huge person. I'm just saying I'm trying to give my versions, and I know that you are too, of for anyone that's in that predicament, these are strategies to counter that sort of, louding kind of thing. The part about the answers, Jill, for any of us that do have great answers for people that possibly are better than their own answers for themselves, one strategy I've seen work really, really well, and I know I've used it, is I have an answer for you. And if it weren't great, you probably wouldn't be hanging out with me. You probably wouldn't be getting a session from me. You probably wouldn't be asking me for my insight. So they are great answers. They're great. They are really good. But it's an answer. You get to decide if it's your answer.
Right. And I feel like in a lot of ways, though, I don't know that I would characterize, honestly, and you can totally refute this, but I don't know what I would characterize that what you do as answers. I think what you offer is an alternative perspective, right? And whenever somebody has the guts to go and ask for an alternative perspective, that's them. That's them being open. Their mind is already open when they're coming to you. Right? So the idea for me is people who don't want an alternate perspective are not going to seek you out. They're also not going to seek out a shrink, right? That's not what they do. So I feel that when people come to me, when people come to you, I'm already honored in a weird way by their openness. Right?
Very well said.
And then you make the distinction as the time goes on, whether that initial openness was just to validate their position, which we do not do, right? You and I both contest anything anybody sees. It's not even that we're playing devil's advocate. We're massaging the brain, right? It's stuck in it's stuck in the record is skipping. Right. And so you and I are both just trying to get the record to not skip. We don't have an iron in the fire as to where that record picks up another track. Right. That's not our job. Our job is to say, you know what, you're stuck. Let's start massaging the fields. Let's start looking at different perspectives. If you are stuck, yes, go look at different perspectives, but don't take them on as your new stuck perspective. You're not trying to land. The whole point is stay open to everything for as long as you can. Answers are not weirdly required. Openness and awareness is.
Yeah. So for anyone that has felt stuck or does feel stuck and is starting to wonder if we're describing them as in that space, one great question to ask yourself is, are you trying to be a better you, or are you trying to be their version of what you are supposed to be? They meaning that system or that guru,
that parent, that anybody, right?
Anybody that feels like they have more authority over you than you do, or a better version of you, a better future scenario goal of you than you do.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of version of that is, are you trying to be your version of them? Right? Are you losing yourself and you're trying to erase in a way your template and wipe your slate clean by idealizing them and trying to be your cookie cutter image of them? And that, again, there's a part of me that just is really aware that some individuals are just really susceptible to that throughout their life, they have somebody they've been trying to emulate, and that is their version of life, and that's what they do. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? Maybe they don't feel enough of themselves that they're an original, that they're unique enough and meaningful enough to just be their own version, their own best version of themselves. That they can be a beautiful, loving, high-functioning person throughout their life and be very focused energetically on emulating someone else. That it could work. It's not my favorite model for them, but am not them. They're not me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be toxic in that frame. But the guru thing, okay, I have a kind of a weird story. So somebody asked me in my community at one point, how did this happen? How did this happen where there are these beings that are, literally on these pedestals that are gurus and call themselves guru, right? How did this happen? And one answer that came to me transcendently is I immediately had this sense of this. It was a male figure. It wasn't like in Middle East / India. And I know those are two totally different areas, but it felt that kind of vibe. No, it was India. It was definitely India. Okay. And they were on a perch kind of thing, and everybody else was below them. And they had a realization in that moment of, I must have been here way more times than these people. So I've been here, i.e. incarnations. I've had more earthly experience, and that's why I have all this wisdom. These guys must be newer to the planet, newer to humanity. So I, as the wise one who has so much soul experience here, am here to assist, guide, help, support those that haven't been here as often. That's why I'm the guru, right? Mm-hmm. That was just a hypothesis, right? Mm-hmm. So that whole system of how many incarnations you've had, what it means if you've had that many incarnations, what it means to have fewer incarnations, that by having more incarnations, you get more wisdom, or you get closer to God, or you get closer and closer to guru status. That entire operating system, that entire belief and mentality is wrapped throughout a lot of aspects of self-help. And personal development and spirituality and a lot of those things. So what's sad is that guru could have also had the hypothesis of, oh, I must have brought with me into this incarnation better access to better answers to the biggest questions than you guys, either that you didn't bring it with you or you forgot it and you're not accessing it. Either way, I'm here to help. But I'm no better than you. This has nothing to do with incarnations. This may be my only incarnation, right? There's a whole different way to explain that somehow people just miss. Mm-hmm. So when I hear somebody brag about, well, do you know how many lifetimes he's had? I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. But maybe I am aided by my grandma. Can I tell one more story?
Yes, of course.
My grandmother, my mom's mom, she was, I think, in her late 70s, and she was having a birthday. And I called her. She was in Minnesota. I was still in Idaho. And I said, Grandma, do you feel smarter? And she said, oh, no, honey. I know a lot of people that were dumb when they're young, and they're still dumb when they're old. And the people that were smart when they were young, they're still smart when they're old.
Yes.
So
that's really good.
Like, that is good to know. That's good to know, Grandma. I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
No,
anyway.
I really like that.
So this whole guru thing and how people fit into it, so it's so unverifiable and dubious and questionable.
We should be questioning. I remember I heard of karma, I don't know, and I never really knew about it before, but the belief in karma, I really thought about it for a while, and I thought this was at a time when I had decided that I had no patience for limiting beliefs. If I'm adopting beliefs as I want, and beliefs are malleable, I couldn't see any reason why I would hold or get behind a limiting belief. It made no sense to me. So I went into this space where everything is possible, because that actually felt a lot better in my body. That just felt a lot better. Rather than saying, I can't, other people can, who knows? I don't really know. But around this same time, karma was, kind of flying in my sphere, or people were talking about it a lot. And I thought, all right, what is karma? Karma is like, whatever you do here, you're going to get kicked for it in the next life, in this life. Somebody's going to get his, they're misbehaving, he'll get his, right? It's this, I don't know, this cosmic form of justice, I guess. But as a person who did a lot of bad things, I was really sinking myself with this idea of karma, because I'm like, is my cancer karma? Like it just started to be like, this is holding on to this idea as true is causing me a lot of mental anguish. And I just decided I don't believe in it. I don't believe in karma. I don't believe in the wheel or whatever, that's part of whatever. I don't know. I don't care. You can, but it wasn't serving me at all. It was causing me a lot of angst and pain. It was judging, weirdly, my every move. A lot of times we're in positions here where helping one person hurts another. That's a bummer. But we get ourselves into those positions. And I was like, I got too much karma coming at me. So that's just another one of those beliefs that's really out there in a hard way, that I've just been like, nope, that's not part of my existence. So we can really choose, and everybody would say, honestly, 90% of the people, if you interviewed them right now, they would believe in karma.
I think so.
It's very culturally, societally, respected, I guess religion, I don't know a lot about other religions that are, non-Judeo-Christian religions, but I think karma is kind of like a big part of that. But to me, it's part of just keeping me in line, just another way to belittle myself. And if nobody else is being harsh on myself, then I can be harsh on myself. It's almost like using that idea to whip yourself with it. And so we have to start to look at how we take these things on and hurt ourselves with them or by them. And we lose a lot of discernment. It is your autonomy to decide what you believe. That is the biggest choice you have here, is that you get to choose what you believe. Why would you take on someone else's hook, line, and sinker, especially if you couldn't really follow through exactly as you needed to? Right? You're harming yourself. These things, self-help is an oxymoron on so many levels. It's not the self and it's not help. Mm-hmm. It can get you somewhere in the beginning. It can be a jumping off point to you, not to your guru.
When it stops helping you be a better you and feels like it's like you'll never be a better you, or you'll never get to the good part of you, that's a great sign to pause, reflect, ask questions, ask somebody that you know really well, that you intuitively probably have a gut feeling of they have not been too jazzed about what I've been into all this time in this thing. Let me ask them, like, what do you think about what I've been, working on and striving towards and all these things? And just listen.
Yeah.
Just listen and acknowledge a part of you that's going to get defensive and triggered. Loyalty comes up really quick. Loyalty to a person, loyalty to the ideology, all of that will start to kind of...
Well, the loyalty...
Come into it.
I don't mean to cut you off. The loyalty is a big thing. The loyalty is because you were searching for an identity, right? And you were maybe like, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going, right? I'm floating. That's actually a beautiful place to be, but we're very uncomfortable there. So we look to land the plane and we're like, I need an identity. I need something fixed. And we take on and we absorb this new idea or culture or whatever, credo, into our identity. And then once it becomes a part of us, yes, we will defend it. And we will reject other people's, trying to poke holes in it. An identity isn't poke-holeable. It cannot be taken from you. It does not need to be defended.
Your real identity.
Yes. Because truthfully, when all of that stuff drops away, that's who you are, right? You're not the mother. You're not the follower of this, whatever. You're not the employee, you're not the teacher, you can get rid of all of those things. Then you have you. Those things don't create your identity. They cover it up.
The real you can't be taken from you. You can't,
and it doesn't need a defense.
It doesn't need a defense. And that could be a really helpful exercise for people to try out too, is when you're introducing yourself, what do you say about you, right? For a lot of people, it's their job. For a lot of people, it's the human roles they play, whether they're a mother, a father, or a child, whatever. There's a lot of like, oh, I'm a mom and I do this for a living, or I'm studying this, or I'm working on that, or I'm a member of this community, member, follower of that group. All of those things, if any of them can be taken away from you, where you are really jarred, like, oh my God, I'm no longer that person's spouse. And that's the whole Eat, Pray, Love story, right? What am I now? I was that person's spouse. That's a very limited identity. That's like a postage stamp sized identity. If you really, when I look at it energetically, compared to, you are a soulful being that made a you to incarnate in this reality. And what do you want to do with it, darling? You know what I mean? That's a huge, endless, platform on which to create and be and explore and wonder and make mistakes.
And play. Play.
Exactly. And laugh at yourself when you get it wrong. You go, oh my God, who do I need to say sorry to? No one this time. Yay! There's just so much more freedom in that. I made some notes while you were talking because I didn't want to forget, and I didn't want to interrupt you.
I interrupt all the time. I'm terrible.
No, you're so good at it. You do it in a very gentle way. I feel like I just start talking. The inability to question what should be questioned is another major red flag that I have with all of this. So if you can't question the person at the helm of that self-help community, whatever that is, right? If they are beyond question, right? And there's a lot of layers to that I recognize even in myself. I can be really sensitive if somebody's challenging me. I feel like there's a great time and a place for that, and not a great time. And I want it to be a fair conversation, right?
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
so that's just me. I'm very sensitive, a very sensitive person. But the inability to question what I think should be questioned. And the irony of this in some ways is that some people that stepped out of some major ideology that was not supposed to be questioned, they questioned that, but then they just hop into another structure of unquestionable teachings, dogma, philosophy. And they never realize it until all of a sudden there's, like you said, that crack, that breakthrough.
Yes.
But I love that moment. And thank you so much, Jill, for giving the example of your experience with karma. I'm with you. I believe karma is an optional belief system. It's a belief that is true as long as you pretend it's true, but that doesn't mean it's true if you don't believe in it, right? And
that's all beliefs to me.
Well, I like the truths that are true whether you believe them or not, right? And this is where we are being obviously explicit about truth versus belief, right? My favorite kind of ideology is true whether you believe it or not, right? Karma is only true if you are pretending, is the word I want to use. And I know people get defensive about that. Whenever I post on this, karma is a belief, not a fact. Oh my God, on my Facebook, people go, they get all like, that has to be true. And I would love to just sit with them and go, but why do you need it to be true so much? Why?
Yeah.
Really, like, why? Why do you have to have that be true? I get it that you want justice, but you and the person that you want to be punished for something, you are something more than that action, than that thought and that deed.
Well, it's the opposite of forgiveness.
It is the opposite of forgiveness, yes. But it's like, no, I can't handle it. If that person that screwed me over, I know I didn't get to hold them accountable, but I certainly I need to know that something is going to hold them accountable. It's like, okay. So I get it that it feels very loosey-goosey out there if you're like, wow, there's no karma. Oh my God, somebody may never be held accountable for that. And I may never get any sort of just rewards for this. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
This is not a fair space. It isn't a fair space.
See, but that's also
designed that way.
That, first of all, what you were saying before, how people are jumping out of one ideology and into another, that's the brain, right? The brain is saying, the brain, I always say, has this 1-2 punch, right? So you're trying to come online and you're starting to question, right? The brain is trying to do status quo. So it gives you this little, okay, you want to question this question. And then it crusts back over and says, all right, if you question this one, let's go find something else that we don't question. Right. So this is where you really have to watch the brain. When you start coming online, stop asking the brain what's next. Stop asking the brain, what should I look for? You are now online, eyes wide open. Just stay open. You're not looking for anything. The brain is the seeker. Yes. So it's so much easier to not be in this looking mode and just be, because when you're looking, you're whittling things down. The brain narrows. It assumes there's an answer to you, to what you're feeling, to what you're experiencing, to, it creates this whole setup that tries to get you from point A to point B. We don't want to go from point A to point B. That is the opposite of the infinite that exists in every moment, right? It's a very winnowed, cold, narrow perspective and operating system. So very much watch the brain. Oh my God, did I just jump from the frying pan into the fire? Because that's where the brain takes you. You gotta watch it. It's very stealth. It's very stealth, and it doesn't give up.
And if those are perfect insights. For the serial junkie of self-help and things like that, just examine your role. Do you keep finding yourself in a like talking to your friends or talking to your family about, oh my God, I just found out about this person. Are you regularly saying that? And then what happened to the last person? Oh, they turned out to be, is this regularly happening to you? So your brain has a pattern of safety and security and enjoyment.
And
sameness. Yes, it's very comfortable with this pattern of, I found someone that is now the best for this version of me. And if you're continuously looking for that person, I mean, you could do something radical and just be like, maybe I'm going to take a break. Maybe I'm going to just pretend that if there is an answer that I need, that maybe it'll just come to me. Maybe the advice and guidance that I received from someone's teachings or their actual words, whatever, maybe I could try that out myself for myself. Or maybe I don't need to put them on any pedestal above me, and that they're a human too, and they have great ideas, and maybe I'm great at, what am I great at? That I can enjoy myself in what I am already good at, and what I'm already just like, wow, I'm really good at being patient. I'm an amazing listener, whatever. What am I great at that I can get more enjoyment out of in my life? That's one part. And then the other major kind of red flag thing I have about some of that self-help is when it pulls you out of your life. That just freaks me out every time when I hear someone's story and they're like, well, I've had clients where they're working with somebody else and then they're like, well, do you think I should quit my job? And I'm like, you make like 7 figures a year in the finance industry. What is she telling you to do? Well, she said, I really need to get on my spiritual path and that this is really a shallow industry for me. My soul didn't come here to be in this financial industry space. And I need to do a coaching program and I need to do readings. And I guess I'm a healer. So I guess I'm supposed to become a healer. And I'm just like, but what if she's wrong? What if it's a huge blessing that you have this ability to make this money? And what if you're a healer and you're intuitive in your work anyway, while you're, doing this stuff in the financial space? with your clients and with your coworkers? What if every day you're in the office, it's a better day for people because they're like, oh my God, thank God, I'm just going to make up a name. Douglas is here. Everything goes better when Douglas is here, don't you think? Where's Douglas today? I miss him, right? He's just a bright spot in the world, right?
I
and
call
he
that,
has
honestly,
job. Yeah.
I call that moving deck chairs on the Titanic, because it's this, number one, it's this shirking of responsibility for self, right? And it's putting it in your circumstances. But the other aspect for me is I always tell people, and this is what I had to tell myself for a long time, is that God is everywhere. Why is God over here better than God over there? It doesn't make any sense, right? It's illogical to think that I can't function in one space, but I can function in another, right? That's kind of upholding, in my opinion, this fractured view of the self. You bring yourself to every party. You will run into yourself no matter where you go. People would say all the time, you know what, I just need to change the scenery. I'm like, okay, but in a year or two, you're going to run into yourself, because it does work for short periods. Like I do say that. And the reason why it works, and it's the part that people don't catch, is because you made a choice for yourself. You deciding you want something new is the right idea, but the execution is incorrect, right? And then you go and you're like, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, all my eggs in this move, all my eggs in this guru. But you forgot that the change began when you made it. And that's what you keep alive. But we don't do that. Once we get to our new place, we're like, all right, show me what you got for me, change me, fix me, do me, whatever. It's not coming from the outside in. It cannot. So again, you've woken yourself up. You've made a change, which is okay. But the change was in the circumstances, which is only temporary. If you don't continue to keep making those changes within every day, independent of your circumstances, and taking responsibility and making choices that honor you, eventually you're going to have to make another move.
Yeah.
Because you're going to run into yourself. You can't outrun yourself. It doesn't work. It's not, that's the divine design.
Right.
Right? And it's actually a gift to you. It's not there to frustrate you every time you change your address.
Exactly.
It's there to bring you back to you. Just saying, okay, I'm going to give you this one. It's going to work for 5 minutes, but after the honeymoon's over, back inside, right? We're going to continue. That's what that's where you're led every time. You're led there every time when things blow up, when the little landmines of your life blow up. So
good. Related to exactly what you just said, the other major red flag for me is the manipulation, right? Can you imagine, and I just thought of this sort of analogy, can you imagine that what if every time we took an airplane anywhere, that the pilot walked through, like, you guys are so lucky to have me as your pilot, like no one else could get you from here to LA. No one. Like, I really am the only one. The other ones, they're so crappy. I mean, did you guys know they used autopilot? They don't even really fly the plane. Like, they're nothing. Did you hear my story that I wanted to be a pilot since I was 2, and that actually someone said to me when I was 10, like, you should be an airline pilot. And all of a sudden, and it was a shaman, by the way, it was a shaman that said, you should be an airline pilot. So I'm destined to be in this role for you today. This plane, it's pretty great, but no one can fly it like me. Other pilots have tried to fly this plane and they just can't, right? And then you land in LA and everybody's like forgetting about the plane, forgetting that there are many other ways to get to LA, including other pilots. And they're just like, that pilot, oh my God, did you meet Captain Joe? Like, how are we ever going to fly another flight without him?
Yeah.
If you really look at it, it is that silly, right? There are so many other ways to look at what you are being helped and supported by that don't take unnecessary credit away from you. or the
I want to challenge that 1 second a little bit.
Okay, go ahead. Let me hear that.
Manipulation is an interesting word. Manipulation to me, we always used to have these things with, when I worked in hospitals, they would call the patients manipulative. It made me furious. And I think what happens is, and I get this a lot, with drug companies too, right? People want quick fixes. They're coming to you asking. You go to the doctor, when you leave there without an antibiotic, you're pissed, right? You're like, I need a pill. I need it. So this is a codependency. It's not a manipulation. It takes two to tango here, right? When people come to me and they're like, Jill, I need answers. I need this. I'm like, I don't have your answers. I can't even tell you how many times people come to me and they're like, what should I do when blah? I'm like, I have no idea. Right? I only know what I can do in that situation. I have no idea what you should do. What we're going to do is we're going to get you back online and we're going to get you back in the driver's seat. And then that whole thing you're talking about is actually probably not going to even be an issue. Right? It's probably going to disappear because your perspective won't even interpret it the way you're interpreting it now. Right? So manipulation is problematic for me, right? Because people they want it.
Yes. I'm not as sensitive to the word, and I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. I guess my point is I do know people, and I do believe like this pilot, my silly story, is a manipulator. Whether he manipulates people is their role on their side of the court. Are they allowing themselves to be manipulated? Are they ones that walk off the plane going, that Captain Joe, wow, what a story. A shaman telling him at 10 he was going to be a pilot. Like, oh my God, I've never had a pilot walk through the aisles. Have you? That was so amazing. By the way, who was flying the plane then? Autopilot, co-captain. Anyway.
There are manipulators. That is true.
Walk off the plane just going like, he's either lying to himself or he's lying to us, but you believe that shit. You know what I mean? So that was my point of the story, is when I hear people's stories and when I hear some of these gurus and when I hear their loyal devotees that somehow, there's overlap in my audience, and the way that they tell that teacher's story is always consistent. It always has the same hooks and triggers in it. Did you hear what they went through? And it's just like, okay, I'm really just observing here the energy of somehow that makes them more qualified or more special, or more saintly or something. It's very interesting. And those stories are regularly told by that person, by that teacher, by that guru, or all of those around.
That's marketing. Right? That's marketing. And by definition, marketing is manipulation.
Yes, exactly. So I just wanted, that to me is the toxic part of it.
Agreed.
By the way,
I agree with that.
When I came across, you already know the story, but I have to add it here. I want to add it here. I remember feeling like, how am I going to explain how I have these gifts? Like all of a sudden in my late 30s, like, number one, I would have thought they weren't possible. What is my story? I kept feeling like I was lacking a story, because the others that I became aware of, they had these amazing stories. I mean, Byron Katie's story is amazing. What's the guy? Wayne Dyer has an amazing story. There's so many amazing stories. I'm like, I don't have a story. And then literally it came to me, Jill, that is my story.
Right.
My story is, I don't have a scary story. I don't have a crazy story. I was not a child of sex abuse. I mean, I was never, locked in somebody's dungeon. I was never eating bugs on the floor. I'm not an orphan. You know what I mean? I don't have any of that.
Okay, funny, not funny.
God bless them, right? I mean, I just like, oh, that's so sad and that's so hard. And somehow that became part of what made them great. It doesn't make everybody that's in that situation extra special. So anyway, so
somebody once told me along those lines.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody once told me along those lines, like, I can't remember how it was coming out, but, somebody was saying, you should really talk more about cancer. People would want to hear that story. And, it just didn't really sit well with me. It was my own personal experience, what I really learned, did, whatever. I didn't like the idea of, it felt manipulative to use it to, tell people about me and what I do. I also don't really, what did I say? I don't like to spend a lot of, not that I don't like to spend a lot of time in it. It's not really part of my life. And it's just interesting, but I never felt like cancer is my story. I mention it here and there, and I don't like when people react to it. I don't, I'm saying it like I crossed the street, I had cancer, I did that, it's not something that I dwell on or want to use as a hook. And it was definitely,
or identify with,
convey or identify with. I don't. And, I appreciate it because I do feel like it. I always say, if you need to get my attention, hit me in the head with a hammer, right? Because I have a very thick head, right? So I'm not the kind of person you can just casually suggest something. I'll dismiss it. If you really want to get my attention, just get my attention, right? So in some ways, that's my joke of like, yeah, okay, that woke me up. I'm awake. That's really the way I look at it. Yeah. And I don't mean that to be offensive to other people. I don't mean to minimize other people's experiences. It is a personal experience. I'm not speaking to anybody else's experience or judging anybody's experience. A lot of people find a lot of solidarity in a lot of the things that are related to cancer and the groups that are related and the survivor, things that people do and the fundraising. There is a lot there, that people can find a lot of solace, camaraderie, connection. That wasn't my purpose for it. But that's not denigrating anybody else's experience or, I just think I should say that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that though, because you're right. There are a lot of individuals that they know, I kind of want to call it like the Oprah model, right? Of you are the hardest thing you've been through. And for some individuals that want you to, I know as someone that's regularly impressed by you and, things that you've done and who and what you are, it's like, oh, I want people to hear you more, right? So I can see why some of your close friends even would be like, oh, you should talk more about your cancer because that fits that Oprah model, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I have all this wisdom and insight and, wit to give you because of this. But is it because of that? And why do we do that? Right. And it's just,
right. Yeah. It was just a direction that's not what I want to talk about anyway.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the brain. I like talking about my brain, not anything else.
Exactly. And I was curious, trying to find the words there, when it came to me, this idea that Oprah isn't Oprah because of the fact that she had she was the victim of, I think, sexual abuse from a relative, from what I understand. Yeah. To me, and that's very maybe arrogant of me to say that isn't what makes Oprah, but my transcendent abilities tell me that Oprah would have been amazing and impressive and a very visible beacon, of whatever she wanted to be a beacon of, really, no matter had that happened to her or not. Right. So her brain is telling her, no, I went through some shit and I had to, recreate myself so that I could get through this and maybe help other people get through their version of a hard time. But it isn't as interesting of a story if it doesn't come with that. And I think that's just a weird part about our brains and psychology and what we look to in a leader and an influencer.
Yeah, we do. We have this underpinning, which, you and I have talked about in other podcasts, where suffering is, whether it's commiserating, whether it's putting people who suffer on a pedestal, like that suffering, it's a big part of this realm, that suffering is required. And that is one of those beliefs that I absolutely reject. I do not believe suffering is required. I have no place for that belief at all.
I'm not convinced it makes everybody a better person. It may make some people a better person. Some people, it just keeps them in a limited space that makes them feel separate from their inherent gloriousness. And that's what I'm always curious about. How can we help unlock the gloriousness in you and you and you and everyone? Because I'm super curious about what this world and what humanity can look like when everyone feels more access to that. Just because it's there, not because of what they've been through.
Exactly. That's why suffering is not required.
Yeah.
Greatness, because it's there all the time.
I'm just trying to look at some forms of greatness that don't fit that Oprah model, that whole self-help industry space. I guess maybe the Nobel Prize. I've never heard of a Nobel Prize. Well, maybe I have. There are some Nobel Prize winners, right, that are just because they were amazing at something. It isn't because of their story.
But I think you go too big for me sometimes, right? Like, so I feel like it doesn't have to be a famous person.
No,
right?
No. I'm just bringing other frameworks.
I think it's more relatable, right? To keep it non-famous, right? So, even in our conversation that Paul and I had yesterday, it's okay if, we want to look at other people's, yes, if we want to look at, people who can belt out a song or who are, notable athletes and, they have a particular skill that right now is valued in this, in this realm. Okay, great. That's what we value. But that doesn't mean that everybody walking this earth doesn't have that, inherent gloriousness, right? That is imperceptible to other people, right? So it's almost like comparing yourself. And I think that's how we get into trouble. And that's how we get to follow gurus, because we're like, I'm not great. He's great. Right. And that's the whole endemic problem here, is that we lack faith in our own gloriousness because we're looking at it that this is the specific way that it shows up, a talent or something recognized by other people. I watch one of my daughters, right? She is, she's nervous about how people see her a lot of the times. And she just wants to, just do right by other people. And she's super, super sweet. And she doesn't want to impose her opinions on other people. But when she starts creating stuff, she is decisive. She doesn't doubt herself. She puts out a product that will blow your mind. And then she just goes back to, I'm not sure I should do that. I'm worried. It's a crazy, beautiful thing that right side by side with this gift, as you talked about, is all that other, not insecurity necessarily, but just this other, treading more lightly. Yes. Right. So it's not even apparent to us what our gifts and skills are.
That's right. So to amplify your point, Jill, like I was mentioning earlier, for someone that is willing to take a pause if they've been in that whole cycle of self-help, personal development, Earth is a school, I got to get through these lessons, just really pause and reflect. And maybe, that's one of my specialties, is helping people acknowledge and really point out for them what they are naturally great at. That can be, and I used these examples a little bit earlier in this episode, they could be a great listener. They might be incredibly patient. So thank you for adding that. I do like to look for public examples because we can all refer to those, right? We all know what a Nobel Prize laureate is, right? So that I like those public systems to look at as examples, but this is everyday gloriousness. I really am curious about a version of humanity and a version of all of us. It doesn't have to be at the same time. Just, I love to celebrate and look for and applaud and help make it easier for people to feel ready access to an absolutely amazing version of themselves, where even their brain says, wow, that was like, what happened right there? Like, that was the best version of us ever. And they may have been alone. It could be anything. They might be cooking. They might be, comforting a loved one. They might be, being patient with a neighbor that used to drive them crazy.
Yeah. And it's not totally consistent either. It's kind of sometimes yes, sometimes no. We are not always the best version of ourselves. And that's just part of being here. This place moves fast, right. And, we just need to give ourselves a much wider berth. It's not the goal. And, and I always think that when we're talking about famous people or people who are influential, I always really want people to think about those are all based on what society values today. Those are situational, cultural values of why that person's, gift, if you will, is more visible at this juncture in time, right? Those things change. They don't often change in our lifetime, but they change over time, right? And so that's why I don't get too bogged down with, what's on display today, because I think most people use that not as a way to appreciate that we all have gifts, but as for this conversation, a way to say that person's gifted, I'm not, or that person's blessed, I'm not. That's how you get into the situation with a guru. Somebody tell me what I'm supposed to do. Somebody tell me what my purpose is. How many people have come to you? I'm sure I asked you that. How many people have come to you and asked you what their purpose is? I have given up completely the belief in purpose because I just feel like, again, that's putting something ahead of me, something to strive for. And that's all brain. How do I get to my purpose? First, you let the brain decide what your purpose is. Then you let your brain decide how to get you there. Your brain has no business telling you who you are, what your purpose is. It's not the brain's purview at all. Right? And that goes back to like a couple episodes ago of like what your brain is for and what it's not for, and how we're overusing this very useful organ. And it just needs to be more, it needs to be reined in.
That's good. I know we talked about this in the Labyrinth series. I can't remember which message it was, but I love the answer about the whole, are you the horse or are you the cart? And what are you serving? Right? Because ideally you're the horse and your life is in supportive of you and your roles and all those things. You're not serving it, and a purpose tends to become the horse and then you become the cart. And a lot of those limited belief systems, compromised belief systems, really. I mean, I can't not give my answer here, that to me, your purpose, anyone's purpose, is what you will allow it to be that helps you be your best self. You don't find it. You don't seek it. You don't discover it. Just like you don't find you. You made you. You make your purpose by you being you in your life. So you get to decide what that is. Your purpose isn't the horse and you're not the cart. The purpose becomes the outcome of you being your unique unicorn.
Yeah.
You can't get it wrong. You can't be off purpose. You can't be off track. You are the purpose. You are the track.
Right. And there's no, I heard somebody say.
The brain says, that's not big enough. That's just me. Like this. It's very underwhelming. Okay, to the brain that isn't impressed with you. Let's add new thoughts so that your brain can be sufficiently impressed and appreciative of who and what you are. And what does make you lovable, likable, high functioning, a valuable member of your tribe and your society?
Right. If that's what you want to be.
Yes,
right.
exactly.
I mean,
Recluse, and then that's your purpose, is to stay as far away from people as possible and just be with your plants and animals.
that's good too. I mean, there's just,
You
can do anything here. You know, the purpose was, in my mind, the purpose was to get here. And I've already completed that. And now I just get to play. Like, I've achieved my purpose, and now I'm here to play. And
your soulfulness made a Jill to be, and it's you. And my soulfulness made a me to be, and it's me. And I get to decide what that means, and you get to decide what you mean to you. And it's error free.
But it's error free, and in that way, it's not really deciding, right? It's allowing it to just be. The beauty is you don't have to decide. Yeah, right. You can just
experimenting.
Experiment. Yes. So there's a lot of ways that we try to really limit ourselves and drill ourselves down, and find the answer and the right thing, and there's only one right thing. I mean, there's just the whole ball of wax is toxic. It's really toxic. And the reason why, if anybody's having trouble, the reason why you are having trouble is because that ball of wax is toxic, not because there's something wrong with you.
Exactly.
Right? That's what the misunderstanding is. It's like, you should be uncomfortable with the constraints and restraints that this place has been placing on you, and that you unwittingly have been placing on yourself as a result of whatever cultural conditioning and, domesticizing, whatever's been done to us through our lifetimes. We're feeling the incompatibility of it. And that's a good thing. Your angst, your anxiety is signaling in a weird way that nothing's wrong with you, and everything is wrong with what you're allowing to impinge upon you from the outside.
Nice. I know we're starting to wrap this up. I'll just add one more kind of like thing to be aware of and maybe watch out for in any of that self-help, self-improvement kind of space is it leading you further into you or further away from you? And is it amplifying your negatives or amplifying your positives? Is it making your negatives, your downfalls, a job for you? And what if they're not?
Yeah. Perfectly said.
Thanks, Jill.
I think that says it all.
Today. This is big. Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to pick on anyone. I love, Jill, that you very clearly stated earlier. They're at the beginning of some of those journeys, some of those explorations, it can feel like, oh, I'm getting so much out of this. And then at some point that may stop, and the brain may not notice that it stopped. And if there's a lot of stickiness in those spaces, there's a lot of distraction and almost preventing your brain from acknowledging, oh, this stopped being helpful a while back there. Right?
Yes. So the plateau that's such a good point, Jill. It is worth, everything starts out pretty good because you're making the decision to change, right? So everything feels like, and it makes you think that what you've started is the answer. So then when it starts to plateau, you're like, I must be doing it wrong. That's an incorrect assessment by the brain. That plateau happens because that's the divine intervention of saying, you've now moved away from yourself and immersed yourself in something else. You have to get back. That's why people choose different things. You look ADD, honestly. People used to be like, oh my God, what's Jill in today? But I would keep switching it up because I knew that once I got to that plateau, there was no saving whatever that was. So it's almost like crack. I was going for the next fix. Luckily, I wasn't staying in anything too long, but I started to realize that the shift to take myself out of a situation I was in and do something different, that was my energy leading the charge each time. And the lack of awareness for that will bring you to a plateau and have you blaming yourself because, wait, it was working and now it's not. I must be doing something wrong. So I'm really glad you brought that up. It's very important to acknowledge that change is only coming from you, not your program. I had a client who said to me once, she was going through a divorce and she said, my healing will begin when I get my husband out of my house. When he moves out, and I think the law wherever she was required that they, can't file for a year or something. Like her healing was a year hence at least in her mind. And I said, no. The healing has already begun. You've already decided. You've already made the changes necessary to make. You're not dependent on healing beginning when he moves out, right? So we're just missing we're missing us before whatever we're trying to implement. We're missing our part, our role, our power, our sovereignty, oh my God, we're missing it. So healing begins the day you decide it begins. That's why a lot of people, when they call doctors, they're like, they put it off. You feel like shit. I'm going to call the doctor. The minute you make that appointment, you feel great. You go into the doctor and you're like, I don't know, for 3 weeks, I really had this pain, but I made the appointment and now I'm here and it doesn't hurt me anymore because you're doing it. You've always been doing it.
Exactly. And for some people that aren't aware of my stories and the way that I use analogies, just to be crystal clear, like really crystal clear, that pilot on that plane might be your yoga teacher. It might be your nutritionist. It might be your healer, your doctor, your coach, your chiropractor. It could be your mindfulness teacher or your meditation teacher. It could be anyone that is making it about them while not making it about you and not making it about the steps and the processes that you're using, that it's more about the plane sometimes than, there's a lot more going on than the pilot. But those that are interested in making it about them, if you let them, it's sometimes at your expense.
Yeah. All right. I think it's a wrap.
We did it.
We did it.
I'm like, it's just it all. When I talk about these things, some people are like, "You're being so negative." I'm like, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to help you from not staying too long in something that isn't working anymore, and helping you stay present and aware of, okay, do I like this? Is this working? All those things. So I think we cut through a lot of it today, Jo.
I think we did. But I think, look, the negative is just the perspective that we were talking about, right? It's that if somebody sees this alternate perspective as us being negative, when we're saying you have everything you need, right? Where could that be negative? Right? Exactly. There's only positive in this statement. If you really listen to this statement the way we're putting it out there, we don't really care about the other people at all. We care about you.
Exactly.
And we're saying you got it all. Right? Yeah. And we're actually saying, and they don't. You do. They don't. It couldn't be more positive. Right? But yes, you're still going to get those people who are identifying. There's nothing we can do about that. But, maybe they can listen again. Listen for a second time. Yes, and now listen with the positive. You listen for the positive lens rather than the critical lens and see maybe you'll hear something different. So,
and I hope people are realizing that you and I are those people. We are that friend that will tell you even what you may not want to hear out of love, out of compassion and out of respect.
Yes, respect. Yes.
I do that to myself, right? When there's something I don't think I want to think about. And then I'm like, maybe that wasn't, maybe that isn't true. Maybe that isn't a good idea. And then I'll go, oh my God, and I'll giggle, and then I'll give myself more room to consider other options and relook at it.
So redirect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, I love you, Jill.
I love you too. Till next week.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. If you enjoyed this, thank you for sharing it with 2 friends. If you're following or subscribing, depending on where you're experiencing this, do you have the notifications turned on? We are releasing new episodes every week, and the best way to make sure that you're aware of when they drop is by having that notification turned on. It normally looks like a bell. If it's on YouTube, there's a little notifications bell. If it's on Spotify, if it's on your Apple Podcasts, it's a little kind of notification thing. And then you'll get a little reminder, hey, there's a new episode. And then you'll hopefully keep expanding and loving yourself and liking yourself even more.
I love it.
Love you, Joe.
Love you too.